The rabbit's name was Harvey, and he set Harvey on the pasture, the sheep pasture, and all of the sheep started to charge at Harvey. And unlike what a normal rabbit would do, Harvey started charging right back at the sheep. And from that moment on, he would herd the sheep. It was his job to herd the sheep. And they called him Harvey the herder. And it just inspired me so much, that story, like something just clicked for me at that moment in time. I was like, if this rabbit, like this freaking rabbit can herd sheep, you know, like imagine if we thought that way. Like, imagine if we just did something different, like what we wanted to do, and it went well for us. And it just instilled this idea of like, with the right nourishment or the right environment or the right surrounding, we can do everything that we've ever believed that we can do.
Welcome to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kraus, and this is the show where we're as passionate about personal growth as we are about saving the planet. We know that life's not just a list of boxes to check off, and we don't sit around just waiting for lightning to strike. We are action takers. We're proactive, passionate, and determined to massively impact this earth and the people on it. For as much as I've already learned throughout my own life, I know there's a lifetime more to go, which is why I'm taking this journey right alongside you. We can do the hard things we dream of. We can answer our soul's deepest callings, and we don't have to do it alone. Our journey towards greater purpose, fulfillment, and joy evolves just as we do. It starts right here, right now, and again tomorrow. This is what it means to be here for more. Welcome back to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kraus. I'm here today with Lonny James. He's the owner of Bunny James, a really cool company. I'm going to let him tell you all about himself and his story and all of that. So excited to have you on the show today. Lonny, thank you for being here. Would you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Lonny, as Natalie nicely put, and again, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's very exciting to talk to you today. I am the head bunny here over at Bunny James. And Bunny James, what we do is we're the leader in food tribe-based gifting. And if you don't know what a food tribe is, that's how we identify with the way that we eat. So if you're gluten-free or you're dairy-free or you're vegan or keto or a mix of many, or you have a ton of allergies, we are your solution for gifting. And we started in my apartment about 6 years ago in Venice, California, and now we're located in Salt Lake City, Utah.
I've never heard the word food tribes. Like I've never heard that term until now, but it's a great term because it's true. It sounds better than saying like, oh, I have all these restrictions or I have these issues, right? And you just say like, this is my tribe. This is where I need to be or where I identify, whatever it is. So I appreciate that. And I know that you have a whole story behind why you started paying attention to all these different tribes. So I'd love to hear about that. Do you want to just dive right in there? Tell us a little bit about why this inclusivity is so important to your brand.
Yeah, that's a really good word, inclusivity. And that's where tribe comes from, is right. It's like the people in your group who you identify with. And I think if you're someone who is in that specialty diet category, you'll notice that you're probably if you're gluten-free or celiac, you're probably part of a Facebook page where you share recipes and talk about different restaurants that you go to. If you're plant-based or vegan, you're probably part of some type of community where you go to, different vegan food shows or you support local vegan restaurants. And what I found is when I was starting this business that we identify with the way that we eat. We really do. And I think in the past, we didn't do that. Like it wasn't like a thing to be part of the plant-based club or whatnot, but now it's like it's part of us. It's our identity, because think about it, we eat 3-4 times a day. It's like a big part of our lives. And what happened is when I was growing up, my family has so many different eating styles in it. My brother's vegan, I'm lactose intolerant, my sister's celiac. My mom's got like funky allergies. So she's allergic to like eggs, avocados, bananas, a bunch of different stuff. My dad's diabetic and my sister is allergic to chocolate. So, I mean, imagine dinner, right?
Yeah.
I felt like growing up, my mom would have like 3 separate dinners going. And really what sparked me to start Bunny James is sending a gift box or a care package or some type of like get well soon gift to our household was a nightmare. You just you couldn't get it right. And growing up, like, because all of us had all of these allergies or specialty diets, going to dinner with us was rough. You kind of think about it. You can think about it in a very like common sense term, right? Let's say you're with a group of people and you want to go get pizza, and one person in the group is lactose intolerant, and it's like, John's here, we can't go get pizza. It's like, shoot.
Uh-huh.
And I think of it the opposite, right? It's like, how do we allow people to embrace, their different eating styles? And that's really what Lonny James was formulated on. We've grown so much and we do so many different things on top of that now, but that's really our base. It's allowing every human on this planet to be able to receive a gift that fits their diet.
I love that. And I think it's so important. And like you said, something that we haven't thought about, or we haven't had to think about it really as much in the past, maybe largely because we were unaware that these are things that, whether it be allergy or intolerance or just preference, it hasn't been as widely accepted, so to speak. So that was my first thought, because both my husband and I are vegan, as we've talked about a little bit. And so we've faced a lot of that kind of like, oh, shoot, Jess and Natalie are here at the family gathering. What are they going to eat, and are they going to, and we always are very conscious of it. Like, we never want to be the person that complains or that turns down the food that someone just labored over. But it is, it's a part of our lifestyle. So we too have tried to figure out how to navigate that. And when we do find a restaurant for us that's all vegan or meet other people, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm home, I feel it. So I totally understand that feeling of like identifying with the way we eat. That in your family, holy cow, there's so much there, which it just is, you take it from big scale, right? You have vegan and celiac and the allergies and whatever. And now it's all like within your own household. So how did you initially start to navigate that before you got to this, place where you could eloquently like navigate the dinner table? What was that like before? Was there a lot of tension around that, or what did that look like?
I have to laugh. It was just a lot of fighting and yelling, really. Like, yeah. I come from a pretty large Jewish family, and it's loud to begin with. And there's like, conversation and conflict just is one in our family. So it was loud and complicated and pretty, you fight your way through it. And it's because like everybody had their own opinion, right? And the funny part is the evolution of it. And I think it's kind of similar to the evolution of it throughout our country. And the evolution of it to me is that people actually just went around in pain for a long time. Like back in the day, like let's say you had, a small gluten intolerance. You weren't technically celiac, but you didn't do well with gluten. And no one really believed you. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, you just don't want to eat the bread or whatever, right? And I feel like people, and this is just my opinion, people actually like were just bloated a lot of the time, or they just kind of had a mild stomach ache all the time. And, they just dealt with it. And now it's like, as we become more in touch with our bodies and understand that everyone's body's different, right? Like some people function better off high protein and low carb, and some people do need a lot of carb in their diet. And over time with my family, like I feel the rest of the world is like, you start to understand, right? You have a little bit more, empathy. You also start to find things that work for everybody, right? Like there are some really great plant-based dinner options that are gluten-free, plant-based, and give the people in the family who kind of want a protein fix, right? Like for some reason, like lentil soup is like a big hit in my family, awesome. So it's like something that can go across everything. And then also everyone else started to take their own initiative of like cooking their own stuff, or, it doesn't always fall on my mom like it used to, which would cause a lot of the fights, right? So that's kind of how it evolved. And I think it's evolved similarly in the real world, is like it's becoming more convenient, right? Like companies like us exist or there's meal prep companies that you can get food from that you can pick paleo, keto, whatever you like. And I think the future, and just to move into the future, is the more convenient it becomes, the easier it will be for everybody. And I think sustainability is the same way. So let me give you an example. Like already this year, we've probably shipped 90,000 packages, right? There's some waste in shipping that many packages. And what's cool is over time, we're starting to see, different types of biodegradable plastic film that we're using to wrap our boxes, or they've actually come out with something that we're really interested in, which is a seed paper. Have you heard of seed paper?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so we've started getting involved in seed paper, and I have a goal within the next 4 to 5 years to actually have all of the boxes that we ship, all of our gift boxes that we ship, to be made with that compostable seed paper exterior, so then people can enjoy their amazing snack gift box and plant it in their backyard. So as those things become more convenient and simple and lower priced, it allows the rest of the world to hop on and enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, bless your mom's heart for trying to navigate that, to cook dinners and whatnot. Like, I can only imagine what a mess to begin with, kind of, as you've said, a lot of yelling. I've been there in my family, and it's mostly just the vegan diet that we're navigating. So I feel it. And I felt
Shout
that
out Penny.
Shout out to Penny. I also feel it, like you've been talking about, in the rest of the world, and we can see the shift starting to happen more and more, and it becoming more accessible, which is so exciting. Sometimes frustration around it, and this just came to mind as you were talking about within your own family, starting to kind of like respect each other and learn how to navigate it and honor each other's decisions or preferences or needs, right? In the world, we find sometimes so much backlash around a certain idea, and maybe, without me, like, I could tell you where I think it comes from, but I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, like how, if you've experienced that same thing, and why you think that is. Like, why are people so angry about certain diets?
Whew, that's a big question to unpack,
Yeah.
and I'm going to try to only unpack it with my experience and not my opinion. I think from what we've seen is change is difficult, right? People just don't like the idea of changing. People don't like the idea of giving up their Starbucks straw, right? It's just kind of
Yeah.
how it's been, and it seems to be just change in general. But similar to my family, it's like sometimes it just takes time, right? Like sometimes you just have to let people get over their little change tantrum, and then eventually the majority of the people typically evolve to support it. I think I'm going to go off in a slightly different direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I can say in regards to my experience is, because Lonny James came in at an angle of gifting,
Yeah.
which is a selfless act, our entry to market has been much simpler than the entry to market that I had when I started this business, because we did the same thing but in vending machines. And why the vending machines was a much more difficult entry to market, because we would put our vending machines in high-end places like law firms and high-end apartment complexes, however you say that, right?
Yeah.
We would put them there, and we would assume that, hey, these are likely Whole Food shoppers. They're going to really like the different types of products that are in here. And a lot of times what we got back is like, where are my Snickers? Like, why don't I have the Snickers that were in the old vending machine? Like, that's what I wanted. And because it was for themselves, right, it affected them. It was a much harder change. And honestly, for the time period that we had our vending machine routes, I don't think we changed those consumers, right? Because it was about them, it was about what they were used to. So within that, 5-year period of time, we didn't change them. We only got the ones who were interested in those products. Whereas now let's look at our gifting business. It's much different, because let's pretend that we're your mom for a second, and she cares about you, and she wants you to feel like she's thinking about you, and she thinks about you enough to be like, oh, I know that Natalie's vegan. I'm going to get her this box and she's going to feel safe eating everything in it. And I'm going to feel super good because like I was thoughtful enough to do that. And Natalie's going to feel amazing because she can't believe that someone thought about her enough to get her stuff that she can eat. And so because gifting is already a selfless act, like that entry to market was much simpler to navigate. But I think the vending machine is a good example where maybe if I would have had that vending machine route today, like which would be about 8 years, then maybe people would have started to convert, but it just takes a while. I think it's just time. I think that's the answer to that question, in my opinion.
I think that's a great reminder because change is hard, especially now after this past year that we've been going through. Change is just like every day, And so, I know your vending machine adventure or endeavor rather was several years back, but change is, if we've learned anything after this past year, it's that change is the only constant, right? It's just going to keep happening.
Yeah.
So, that's super interesting. And when you first said it, it was like, wow, really? And then I thought about it again and I was like, you know what? That makes perfect sense from the change stance. But also you were talking about like people not converting, so to speak, like not going with the change, like you introduced. So you introduced this change of, okay, we're taking your vending machine that you've been used to, and we're putting in this new vending machine with snacks that are catering to all these different diets and lifestyles. And they're also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're also meant to be a little bit healthier, right? Aren't they supposed to be like better options as well? Okay.
Yeah. All of our products are clean, mission-based brands. Yeah.
That's what I thought. And I remember that too, because I received my own bunny box for Christmas last year. So I've had a great experience before I even knew you or really anything about your brand. But that's besides the point. Yeah. You take something and you think like, oh, let me make it better, and then people don't like that. And it's confusing. And so, yeah, I think the change for sure. But then what also came up for me was this idea of trying to tell someone, and maybe this is along the same lines of, but trying to tell someone like, this could be better for you. This could be an option that supports you and your lifestyle and your long-term health. And then people don't want to do that. And so this maybe is not even a question, but it's just making me think about how, like my husband and I learning everything we have about plant-based eating. And so over the course of the past now 3 years, we've kind of brought that into my family and our families and like, okay, here's some ideas of how you could eat a little more plant-based, which is sometimes awesome. And it's really accepted. And then sometimes it's met with great resistance. And I find like, I know my husband, he'll get really frustrated sometimes like, man, I see this person who is struggling with this health problem. I'm trying to leave it open-ended and a little bit vague, but they're struggling with this. And I know that this potential lifestyle shift, eating a little bit cleaner in this way could really benefit them. And they don't want to do it, and so then you're watching that person not take care of themselves or not do everything they can. And so I tried to kind of step back and say like, okay, I can only do as much as I can for myself. And it's not my job to fix everyone else. Right. But you do start to kind of, and I'm sure you too, with now you're so aware of all of these different allergies and lifestyles, like you're so aware of them. So I don't even know what the question is here. I just noticed that resistance. I've got a question for you. Yeah. Shoot.
Yeah, I've got a question for you because I think this might be a little fun experiment real quick. But
cool.
Was there a reason that you decided to be plant-based?
Oh yeah. Lots of reasons. But the primary
was there something that kind of turned you?
Yeah, the primary started with the ethical for the animals and the environmental stance. And then as I learned about the health, then it became a health thing as well. So those three things were and are still the real driving forces.
Yeah, I think that's the answer that we found is that people kind of reminds me of like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the recovery space. But
Mhm.
people kind of have to find their, like, let's say, and I don't want to bring up politics or anything that I shouldn't on your podcast, but let's say someone's like has a substance abuse problem, right? And all of the people in their lives are, it's very clear to everyone else that they should stop using substances. It doesn't work well for them. Like, they're wrecking their lives. It's just not looking good for them. And they've had a million people tell them to stop, and they can't. And until the moment that they are like, wow, I can't live my life like this anymore, this is really hurting me, and they make that decision for themselves, until they make that decision for themselves, the change just doesn't seem valid or worthwhile. And then once they make that change, right, their lives get a million times better, and they love it, and they can't believe they waited so long. I think kind of what you were saying with food, it's very similar, maybe much less severe, but it's like you made a decision because you believed in it, right? There was something about it that made you feel something. And especially when it comes to like ethics around animals and how they're treated, like it was a no-brainer. Like, you made a decision. And I think like the only way for people to truly make a shift, especially when it comes to eating, is to have something that they believe in that makes that shift for them. Otherwise, it's almost like frustrating for them to have someone else tell them how to eat. And that's why I think time is the ultimate answer, because as you start to be more aware of all of these things that are going around, especially in the food space, that's kind of what sparks your idea to these decisions. And I bet with your decision to go plant-based and vegan, you probably saw something that really changed your mind. And I'm sure that came as an evolution of time too.
Absolutely. And that is really, when we get down to it, what I remind myself, what I remind my husband when he gets worked up or frustrated or anything. And so
Yeah.
it truly, it's like those things that we know, but we have to continue to be aware of. We know how it sucks when someone's trying to tell you something that doesn't feel good or feel right, and so we never want to be those people for our own family. Like, we don't want to be, oh God, Natalie and Jess are here. What are they going to tell us now? Like, truly.
Yeah, the vegan missionaries are back.
Oh God, I know. And I don't like that either. That was my kind of
Yeah.
first impression of it too, before I was ever vegan, was like, there might be some cool ones, and then there's some really, really intense vegans, and it's a lot, so that's probably with every scenario, you get kind of those different ends of the spectrum, the people who are super intense, and then the people who you don't even know that they have they eat a different way than you until you get to know them. Yeah, no, I appreciate that you brought up substance abuse and addiction, because I am familiar with it in my life. And I know a lot of other people who have experience with that as well. And you're right, while there is a different severity there, it is a good reminder that it's not on, we can't do anything, it's on that person. So I appreciate it. I didn't know we'd be talking about that today, but it's a really good reminder. With that, you mentioned sustainability in your brand, and that's something you're kind of going towards. So I'm curious, like, is that something that it has always been important to you, or have you started to notice it, kind of in the space, and now it's becoming something that's important to you?
So I grew up in a natural food store. My mom was a manager, just like a little co-op, and anybody who's listening who really knows a co-op, like a co-op that you walk in, you smell that like earthy essential oil smell, like right when you walk in the door.
Oh yeah.
And we were drinking kombucha like way before it was cool. And so, yeah, the answer to your question is yes. Like, I've just naturally been around it my whole life, just like a different way of living and a different way of using products and a different way of looking at what we put in our bodies, because we forget that food's the most powerful drug that we put in our body like 3 to 4 times a day. And so the answer is subconsciously yes.
Right.
Like, it's not something that I was never on a mission to go like see how many trees I can plant, but just naturally we've built it into the business, which is cool. And just to speak on some data, so without any effort, vegan and plant-based offerings are 39% of our business. And that's just because of its growth. And it continues to grow at the highest percentage over all of the other food tribes that we have. So we have over 70 different assortments, and that's different combinations of allergies. That's keto, right? Which is pretty much the opposite of being plant-based. That's, high protein fitness, diabetic friendly. Like we've got literally everything. So you can go to our site and check it out. But like none even, like you can just see this trajectory. And I would assume that probably within the next 5 years, I would say 60% of our business is going to be plant-based, just out of the way the world's going. So that's a cool part, because I think the more plant-based we go, the more sustainable we become. And then on the side of packaging, yeah, I absolutely have a dream to become carbon neutral with a physical product that's not an easy thing to do. When you're shipping a product that requires, cardboard to be moved around the country, you really have to think about it long term. And that's why I'm so excited. I'm excited for the other people who are allowing this to happen for us, meaning like people who are spending a lot of time on sustainable packaging are the real ones who are changing the world. Because Amazon's not going to stop shipping, right? Like that's not going anywhere. More groceries are going to be delivered to home. That's the way the world's going. So as people, just these brilliant people who get smarter and smarter and are like, hey, let's figure out ways to make poly bags biodegradable. Like those are the people who are really making a huge difference, because the shipping isn't going to stop, the commerce isn't going to stop, and they allow companies like us to just get better. So we're really focused on using more and more of those solutions as they come out and as they become more affordable, which they absolutely are.
And it is also thanks to you for having that awareness to even pursue that, because you don't have to, right? I'm sure it is, like you said, now it's becoming more affordable, but it's definitely a more pricey option, I'm sure, to go with the renewable or those kind of options. So,
I'm going to take less credit, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I'm going to take less credit, because what I'm going to say is you're not going to be able to survive as an entrepreneur without having a focus on sustainability in a few years. People care too much, right? Like it's very clear looking outside, like that climate change isn't just like something that Natalie the vegan is talking about anymore. Mm-hmm. Like it's super clear. And we can see the analytics on our site, and we can see that people go to our About Us page. Like they care about what businesses are doing. And believe it or not, so let me give you a good example. We sell on Amazon, and we get calls all the time. Hey, we saw your product on Amazon, but we wanted to come buy directly from you because we want to support your small business. We like that you do philanthropy. Like we know that Amazon's going to take a cut. So I just wanted to let you know we're going to buy from you. That's crazy to me. That's crazy awesome to me that people like care about where they're spending their money. And I would put a lot of money betting down on that. Like if companies don't have plans for sustainability, at least long term, they're not going to be able to survive as a business anymore.
That's super refreshing to hear. I haven't gotten to speak too much about this aspect with other business owners. And that is something that I totally do when I went right to your About page on your company's website. I do that with like every company now, especially. And when they don't have an About page, I'm like, oh, well, are they hiding something? Why aren't they telling me about their company? So if I'm doing it, there absolutely are other people doing it too. And it is encouraging to hear that it's not like the one or two people, it's happening consistently enough. And so like with your company specifically, I love snacks, and there's always that like, oh, but they come in packaging, oh man, should we go for like the fresh non-packaged option, which you can make a goal, but then also there's snacks are, like they're easy, and you still want them and there's always going to be a demand for them. So yeah, let's, cheers to those packaging experts who are working on those things that hopefully can just make it better and better. That's a really awesome goal for your business to become carbon neutral. And as many as possible in the future as well. So I am giving you credit for that.
My mom actually works for, shout out to Penny again. My mom actually works for a chocolate company, and maybe you've heard of it, but what they do is incredible. And we source them for some of our gift boxes. It's a chocolate company, a fair trade chocolate company called Alter Eco.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
sustainability is their number one pillar. And they use packaging to wrap their chocolate and their truffles, and all of it is 100% biodegradable. And if they can do it, other snack brands can do it. They probably just pay a little bit more of a premium, but it's coming. The technology's there, which is really what matters, is that the technology's there. So I'm excited to see that continue to evolve.
That's super exciting. That's an awesome brand that I like their chocolate. So that's cool too.
Yeah.
So I have two more prominent questions in mind, maybe more, I don't know. Well, first of all, the sign that's behind you, does it say pray for the haters?
Oh, you can see that, huh?
Yeah, I saw pray for, and then I was like, what is the rest? Is that what it says?
Yeah, it says, it probably was where I was at actually in my career. I remember when I was running the business out of my apartment and my bed was surrounded by snacks. That was actually something that I made. And I make these all the time, actually. Like, this is another one that I've made that says, love the struggle. Maybe you can see it down there.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're kind of, I think they're just a good way to express where I'm at. And sometimes being a little artistic helps me get out of, the normal day-to-day thinking. But yes, that is what it says.
Pray for the haters. Have you had a lot of haters?
Yeah. I wouldn't, how do I answer this question? I would say being an entrepreneur is inherently lonely. And sometimes I think, especially in the beginning, it kind of feels like it's you against everybody who doesn't believe in you. The truth for me was that I got into building my own business because I wanted to prove to myself that I was enough and that I could do it. Because for some reason, ever since I was a child, I was telling myself that, like, if you didn't think I was enough, I didn't think I was enough either. And so I had been on this journey to, like, show the world or show myself or show whatever that I was enough and that I was capable. And, as I've luckily had a little bit of success over the years, you start to reanalyze that a little bit, that thought. But I would say that it's probably not a unique feeling when you're starting your business or your project or your podcast, because it's just you alone and the work, and you're not getting the payoff or the recognition, and it's just not working how you want it to work. I just remember laying in my bed, like, working, because I had a day job too, and I was doing it at night and on the weekends. And I just remember laying in my bed, and, like, I remember tears rolling down my face, and I was just like, it was just like, it was a dream. Nothing was promised to me. So I would say, I don't know if it was particular to me having a lot of haters, but it was more of having something to prove and trying to show that I could. And that's probably where that came from. But I keep it today. It's a good reminder.
It's a really good reminder. And look at you doing big things. So that's incredible. Yeah. But I wholeheartedly relate to that in the world of entrepreneurship and my journey on it too. Yes, it can be very lonely. I've been talking about that a lot with my husband recently because we are both entrepreneurs and it's tough. So there's good weeks and really bad weeks. And so I relate to it a lot. So seeing that, pray for the haters, and just hearing from another person, we need more of that transparency and that connection to not quit, because it's so easy to be like, well, no, this is on me. I don't have to show up to some boss, so I could just not do it anymore if I didn't want to, so in some of those times when I'm sure you're like, where is this going? What am I doing? Like, how did you keep going?
I think it's, for me, and everybody's different, but I would say, which is probably a very common answer if people really want to get honest about it. Mm-hmm. The reason why I kept going was I was scared to fail. I didn't want to fail. And I didn't want to know what that felt like to fail.
Yeah.
Looking back,
Yeah.
I failed a bunch of different times, right? The vending machines failed. I had a website that I launched that failed. Like, I had a lot of things that failed that actually were great to getting me where I was. But like, it's the mentality of it wasn't an option to quit, to fail. I couldn't handle it. I would say my mentality today, maybe 50% fear-based, 50% faith-based, right? Like, which is wonderful when you can get into some faith-based success. Like, this is going to work out for me. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
I get to do this, But I would say, unfortunately, it was fear. I think if you listen to a lot of podcasts about entrepreneurs, that the majority of them, a lot, at least in the beginning, are driven by that fear of failure. And the goal is for myself to have that evolve into more of just an abundant way of thinking, which, like, hey, there's so much opportunity out here. There's so many ways to make this world a better place. There's so many ways to become wealthy. Like, I'm just going to enjoy the ride here. And that's what I lean much more towards nowadays. I mean, we all have our rough days, but it was definitely fear in the beginning.
Absolutely. That abundance piece, abundance from scarcity, is something I've talked about on different podcast episodes. I've heard it in different podcast episodes and books and whatnot. And I still am reminding myself it today. So it's definitely ever evolving. And yeah, there's no shame in that, right? That it starts from a place of fear, because, you could argue that, well, like, you could just take the desk job and sit there and it'll be comfortable, not extremely comfortable, but it'll be more reliable maybe, and you won't get funny looks, and you will get the paycheck, and it would be quote unquote easier. But would it be opening all these doors for you? And would you be making the same impact and feeling the same way about it? Probably not. If you're an entrepreneur, then probably not. So yeah, that's the reality behind entrepreneurship. I think it's really freaking tough, and it's not for the faint of heart, but very rewarding as well, right?
Yeah,
So
I listen to a lot of I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs, and especially the ones who are on their like second or third time around of a successful venture. It's always fun to see how, like, capable they know that they are the second or third time, and they get to go about it with a totally different mindset and know that, like, you don't have to be shaking in your shoes every night like you were the first time, just to make it through. And it's cool to know that there's another option out there. So, but fear is definitely a good motivator. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really great point. I love that. So the last thing that I would love for you to share, which I know this is right on your website, but I read it and thought it was so cool. Tell us about why Bunny James. Tell us where that name came from.
Absolutely. I was in San Francisco at a trade show for this company I work for. I used to work for this really large healthy food distributor called UNFI. So they distribute all of the food to Whole Foods and Sprouts and, all of the better for you grocery stores. And we went to dinner. It was like kind of like a pub/restaurant place. And on the wall was this framed newspaper clipping, and it read Amazing Rabbit. And it was this true story, and you can look it up if you're listening. You can Google Harvey the Herder. And it was a story about this bar rabbit. And it was a bartender who owned a bar, and he had a rabbit that would sit at the bar, and he would feed the rabbit gin-soaked carrots. And there was a local sheep farmer that would come to the bar, and one day he said to the bartender, he said, "This is no place for a rabbit. Why don't I take him back to my sheep farm and he can live a better life?" And the bartender obliged, and the sheep farmer took the rabbit and brought him back to the farm. And the rabbit's name was Harvey, and he set Harvey on the pasture, the sheep pasture, and all of the sheep started to charge at Harvey. And unlike what a normal rabbit would do, Harvey started charging right back at the sheep. And from that moment on, he would herd the sheep. It was his job to herd the sheep, and they called him Harvey the Herder. And it just inspired me so much, that story. Like, something just clicked for me at that moment in time. I was like, if this rabbit, like this freaking rabbit, can herd sheep, like, imagine if we thought that way. Like, imagine if we just did something different, like what we wanted to do, and it went well for us. And yeah, and it just instilled this idea of like, hey, like with the right nourishment or the right environment or the right surrounding, we can do everything that we've ever believed that we can do. And so what I did is I took that message and I took that story and I built it into a brand. And we took the bunny from the story, and James is my middle name. We wanted to add a personal touch. And we call ourselves Bunny James. And today that story comes in every single one of our gift boxes. And all of our boxes are also built with motivational messaging on it. And that also comes from me personally and the story. But like the moment that you open one of our gift boxes, it says you're enough. Like, boom, that's what you're hit with. So it's just really how we believe and how we run our company, and how we treat our employees. And like, it's just that message and that story built into what we do.
Man, that's what you hope for in a brand. At least that's what I hope for in a brand, is all of these different pillars really emphasized. So, I know you don't want to take all the credit, but thank you for building a brand that focuses so diligently on all these different areas. I think what you're doing is super cool. And I know from receiving my gift box last Christmas that was totally that experience that you were naming. I felt so loved receiving something that was all vegan and super excited about it, especially as someone who loves snacks. And my father-in-law knew that I enjoyed it, so it made him happy in return. So you're doing great things, and I'm so happy to have met you. So cool. Thanks for being on the show today, Lonny.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you caring about talking to me and hearing about Bunny James.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, will you please tell our listeners where they can find you online, where they can find Bunny James, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So you can go to bunnyjames.com, BUNNY, James, JAMES.com, and that'll take you to our website. If you want to check us out on Instagram, it's Mr. Bunny James, so just put a Mr. below that. We're also on TikTok. And then if you would like to kind of hear about what I'm doing, you can go to LonnyJames.com, and Lonny is spelled LONNY, James, JAMES.com.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Lonny. I appreciate you. And yeah, I don't have to wish you luck because I already know you don't need it. You're doing great things. Yeah. Thanks again. We'll talk more soon, and we'll go get more of your boxes.
There we go. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for tuning in today to another episode of Here for More podcast. We are just under 5 months out from our very first surf and yoga wellness retreat. This is put on by my husband, Jess, and I. We are so excited. We are taking a group of wonderful humans to Troncones, Mexico, December 11th to 18th. If you would like to know more details about our surf and yoga retreat, the link is in the show notes. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes, the link is right there, super clear, surf and yoga wellness retreat. All the details are there. If you can't find something there, email me, message me on Instagram at Natalie J. Kraus. I'm a super open book, and this retreat is for you. This is an extension of everything you get here at the podcast. So it's living here for more real time, living for more while surfing, while doing yoga on a beautiful outdoor deck. Oh, what more could you want? So go check out the link, send me questions if you have any, and I hope to see you in Mexico. All right, well, that's all I've got for you today. Just remember that you are here for so much more. Till next time.